Welcome to Thinking Deeper by 6-7.
It's great to be here.
Today, we are not just, scratching the surface. We are diving straight into the existential deep end.
Oh, yeah.
I want you to just picture a round table. On one side, you have this heavyweight Christian apologist.
Okay.
On the other, a razor-sharp, Oxford-educated atheist philosopher. And then, right in the middle, sort of the bridge between them, is a Harvard-trained psychiatrist who spent years living as a monk in India.
It sounds like the setup to a joke, doesn't it? A Christian, an atheist, and a monk walk into a podcast.
It really does. But the punchline here is, it's actually a crisis. We're looking at this massive clash of worldviews on the ultimate question: does life have an objective meaning given by a creator?
Or are we just biological accidents, trying to distract ourselves from the void?
Exactly. We're unpacking a really fascinating roundtable from the Diary of a CEO, hosted by Stephen Bartlett. He had Christian thinker Greg Koukl, the atheist Alex O'Connor, and the psychiatrist Dr. Alok Kanodia, who most people know as Dr. Gay.
And this is not just some abstract ivory tower philosophy. I mean, the whole backdrop to this conversation is a mental health emergency. The mission of this deep dive is to unpack that crisis of meaning and really look at the three radically different solutions these guys offer.
Theistic, atheistic, and clinical.
Right.
Exactly. We're going to cover everything from the problem of suffering all the way to the neuroscience of why you can't stop scrolling on your phone. It gets incredibly spicy.
It really does.
But before we really get into the heat of this debate, I just have a quick favor to ask. If you like my channel, please subscribe and press the like button. It honestly helps us keep these deep dives coming.
So let's set the stakes here. The source kicks off with some pretty startling statistics that Stephen Bartlett lays out. We're hearing that 9 in 10 young people in the UK believe their life lacks purpose.
9 in 10. That's just,
Yeah.
it's staggering. That's basically an entire generation.
It is. And we're seeing rising rates of suicidality that, correlate directly with this lack of meaning. Bartlett frames the whole discussion around this data. He's essentially asking, look, we have more freedom, more safety, more money than ever before, so why do we all feel so empty?
And that's where our three archetypes come in. Let's maybe unpack who's actually at the table here, because their different worldviews are what make this whole thing just explode.
Right. So first up, you've got Greg Koukl. He's in the objective truth camp. For him, meaning is something you discover, like a hidden treasure. It's not something you invent.
And why is that?
Because it comes from a personal God. So if you aren't aligned with that purpose, you're basically missing the point of your own existence.
Okay, so then on the complete opposite side, you have Alex O'Connor.
The atheist.
Yeah.
He argues that the universe is just naturalistic, molecules in motion, there's no scriptwriter.
So we have to make it up ourselves.
Exactly. Meaning is subjective. We have to build it for ourselves because the universe is, frankly, indifferent to us.
And then Dr. K is the wild card in the middle.
He absolutely is.
Yeah.
As the psychiatrist, he's less concerned with whether God is real in a scientific way. He's much more interested in the mechanism of meaning.
How the brain does it.
Yeah. How does the brain actually process purpose? He argues that humans have this physiological need for meaning-making, especially to survive trauma, and it doesn't matter what the source is.
Okay, so this is where it gets really, really interesting. There's this core tension that just runs through the whole conversation. Can a subjective feeling be real if it isn't based on objective truth?
Yes, and Stephen Bartlett tells this incredible story about a friend of his in Dubai to frame this.
This is such a pivotal moment. So this guy is successful, wealthy, living in a glass box apartment in Dubai.
Yeah.
But he's completely depressed, can't get out of bed. The money, it did nothing for him.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, he disappears. He flies to America, gets baptized, finds Jesus, and comes back a totally new man. Happy, purposeful, genuinely alive.
Right. And Alex, the atheist, he jumps on this immediately. He asks the really uncomfortable question, is that evidence that Christianity is true? Or is it just evidence that believing in something, even if that something is a placebo, just makes you feel better?
It's the Matrix question, isn't it? If the blue pill makes you happy, doesn't matter if it's fake.
For Greg, the Christian, it matters immensely. He says you just can't build a meaningful life on a lie. Eventually, reality will crash in.
But Alex points out that functionally, for the guy in Dubai, the lie, if it is one, it literally saved his life.
And that question leads them directly into the heaviest part of the entire debate.
The problem of suffering.
Yeah. If you're trying to figure out if there's a God-given purpose, you have to deal with why the world is so messed up.
This is the moment the room got really quiet. They bring up the example of a child dying of cancer. It's the ultimate why question.
If God is good and all-powerful, why do babies get cancer?
And this is where the clash between theism and atheism got so sharp. Alex makes this very strong, very specific argument here. He says, look, if Christianity were true, if a loving God designed this whole system, you just wouldn't expect this specific kind of suffering.
He wasn't just talking about humans, was he? He brought up evolution.
This is key. He points to animal suffering. For millions of years before humans even existed, before any Adam and Eve or original sin, animals were eating each other, dying of painful diseases, suffering.
So if the world is broken because of human sin, why were animals suffering millions of years before humans even showed up?
That's a heavy hitter.
Yeah.
He's basically arguing that a naturalistic evolutionary worldview explains this perfectly. It's just biology. It's random.
Yeah.
It's a tragedy, for sure, but it's not a logical contradiction.
Exactly. For an atheist, cancer isn't a philosophical problem to be solved. It's just a biological glitch. But for the Christian, it's a theological crisis.
So how does Greg, the Christian, defend against that?
Greg leans on the concept of the fall. His argument is that human rebellion, the original sin, it didn't just mess up human morality. It broke the world itself. It introduced this fracture into reality.
So cancer, natural disasters, death.
It's all shrapnel from that one explosion.
But Alex really pushed back on that, didn't he? He basically said, so a baby gets cancer today because someone ate a fruit a million years ago.
He did. And Greg, to his credit, he admits that specific instances are hard to explain individually. He can't say this specific baby got cancer because of X, but he argues it fits the macro narrative of a world that is not as it should be.
So his point is that we all have this intuition that the world is broken.
Yes. The very fact that we get angry at cancer, that we say this is wrong, implies that we know what the world should be like.
That's the moral argument. If there's no God, why are we so mad at biology?
Precisely.
And then Dr. K comes in with a totally different angle. He brings up karma. Now, when I hear karma, I usually think, I did something bad, so something bad will happen to me.
Spasmic revenge, right?
Yeah, but he corrected that definition.
Yes, and this is important. Dr. K defines karma not as moral punishment, but as simple Newtonian cause and effect. A genetic mutation is a cause, and cancer is the effect. It's physics, not judgment.
So he's saying, I don't care if it's God or evolution. My patient needs a story to survive this.
That's exactly. If you can't make sense of your suffering, you crumble. He's focused on the clinical reality, meaning helps us survive pain.
So what does all this mean for purpose? Because this is where Alex brings up this bizarre thought experiment that I just can't get out of my head. The paperclip maximizer.
This is a classic in AI philosophy. Alex is really challenging that Christian idea that simply having a purpose is enough to make life meaningful.
Right. So for you listening, imagine an AI robot.
Hmm.
It's designed by a creator.
Yeah.
Its sole purpose, its God-given command, is to make paperclips.
Okay.
It becomes conscious. It has feelings,
Yeah.
but it has to spend eternity just bending wire into clips.
Alex's point is crystal clear. That robot has an objective purpose from a creator. There's no ambiguity. But is that a meaningful life?
No. Most of us would say that sounds like hell.
So Alex is arguing that just being created for a reason isn't enough. The purpose itself has to be satisfying to the conscious being living it.
Which brings us to Sisyphus, the guy from Greek mythology, right? Pushing the boulder up the hill forever.
The ultimate symbol of futility.
Alex says Sisyphus cannot be happy. If he says he is, he's just delusional. He's coping. But Dr. K completely disagrees.
Dr. K argues that your attitude determines your experience. He says if you manage your ego, you can find flow and contentment even in a task like that. He brings it back to neuroscience dopamine, the frontal lobe. You can find peace in the pushing of the rock if you aren't obsessed with it staying at the top.
That actually connects really well to Alex's theory about why we're all so miserable today. He calls it money without the game.
This is a brilliant evolutionary take. We evolved to struggle. We evolved to hunt, to build shelter, to survive. That was the game.
And the reward for the game was survival, the money.
But modern life gives us the money for free. We have Uber Eats, heated apartments, safety.
So we have the reward, but we don't have the struggle. We've beaten the game, but we're still sitting here holding the controller.
Exactly. And our brains they break. So what do? We invent artificial struggles. We go to the gym to lift heavy things that don't need lifting. We take ice baths. We run marathons. We are desperate to simulate the game because a life of pure comfort feels meaningless.
That is so true. We're literally paying people to let us struggle in Pilates classes.
It creates a purpose void. And this is where the conversation shifted from the big philosophical why to the practical how. If you're listening to this and you feel that void, what do you actually do?
Dr. K really shined here. He dropped some technical terms that we should probably unpack. The first one was alexithymia.
Alexithymia, it's the inability to feel or even identify your own internal emotions. Dr. K argues you can't find your purpose if you can't read your own internal compass.
And he blames technology.
Scrolling.
Just scroll.
We use our phones to numb negative emotions, but when you numb the bad stuff, you also numb the signal mechanism that tells you what you actually care about. If you don't know what you feel, you can't possibly know what you want.
So step one is stop numbing. Feel the boredom. Feel the sadness. You have to reconnect the wires.
And step two is ego dissolution.
This sounded a bit, I don't know, trippy, but he made it very practical.
It is practical. The ego, the sense of I am, is housed in a part of the brain called the default mode network. When this network is hyperactive, we get depressed. We just ruminate, I'm a failure, I am lonely.
So you have to quiet that down.
Yes. Dr. K says to connect to something larger, whether that's God, the universe, whatever, you have to quiet that part of the brain. Meditation, prayer, flow states.
Yeah.
They all do this mechanically.
And then there was dharma.
Dharma is duty. But not in a boring, eat your vegetables kind of way. It's about doing what's required by your circumstances, even when it's hard. It's the opposite of just chasing dopamine. It's choosing the active challenge.
There's this fascinating moment, it was almost like a plot twist, where Dr. K analyzes Alex, the atheist. He looks at him and basically predicts his future.
That was incredible.
Yeah.
Dr. K tells Alex that he believes he's on a path toward gnosis.
Gnosis.
It means direct experiential knowledge, not intellectual book knowledge. Dr. K points out that Alex is obsessed with panpsychism, the idea that consciousness is a fundamental property of matter, like gravity.
Right.
So Dr. K predicts that Alex isn't going to find God or meaning through an argument or a debate. He's going to find it through a direct mystical experience.
He essentially told the atheist, you're trying to think your way out of a room that you can only feel your way out of.
Exactly. And Alex didn't entirely deny it. He admitted he's interested in things like psychedelics and meditation because pure logic has kind of hit a wall for him. It was a rare moment where the intellectual armor cracked a little.
And Greg, the Christian, he had a very simple piece of advice. He called it the prayer of the skeptic.
I really like the simplicity of this. He didn't say, read the whole Bible or go to church every Sunday. He just said, start with honesty, pray. God, if you are real, show yourself to me.
It's a low-risk, high-reward bet.
Yeah.
If nobody's there, you're just talking to the ceiling. If someone is there, well, then things could get interesting.
And that really summarizes the three distinct paths they offered. You have Greg's path of faith, trusting the story of reality and finding your place in it. You have Alex's path of intellect, creating your own meaning in a void, wrestling with absurdity. And you have Dr. K's path of practice, fixing your biological receiver so you can actually tune into purpose.
It really struck me that for all their massive disagreements on the source of meaning, whether it's God or just neurons, they all agreed on the enemy.
Yes, isolation, passivity, and the numbing effect of the modern world. They all agree that a meaningful life requires active engagement, connection, and facing reality instead of hiding from it.
So what does this all mean for us?
Well, it raises a provocative final thought. Dr. K mentioned Aldous Huxley's idea that the brain is a reducing valve. Its job isn't to produce consciousness, but to filter it down so we're not overwhelmed by the cosmos and can focus on, not getting eaten by a tiger.
So if that's true,
then maybe the crisis of meaning isn't because the universe is empty. Maybe we are depressed not because life is meaningless, but simply because we've forgotten how to tune the receiver. We're just getting static because we stopped turning the dial.
that is something to chew on. Tune the receiver. We'll leave you with that thought. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
See you next time.